Guys, you won't believe it. The Type 5 Heavy is getting buffed. That's all we need to know to reinstall World of Tanks again. Thank you Wargaming for that, which only took you 3 years, which is considered lightning fast by Wargaming's balancing department standards. And honestly, I'm quite surprised that World of Tanks 2.0 isn't introducing a new gambling box mechanic, which means for once, we're already off to a lovely start. So in this video, we will take a comprehensive look at World of Tanks 2.0 and try to see which gap Wargaming wants to fill with the new tier 11 tanks. My gut feeling, which has been following Wargaming around for the last 15 years, tells me that the gap they really want to fill is in their wallets. Most likely by introducing tier 10 premium tanks, but more on that in a moment. While we dive into all the details of World of Tanks 2.0, sit back and enjoy some good old pre-1.0 World of Tanks gameplay. Just so we don't forget everything Wargaming managed to take away from us over the years. Let's start with the place we spent most of our time in, the garage. The new garage itself looks nice. Personally, I've always liked the hangar more than the forest. So going back to a proper hangar is a big W. The new garage UI on the other hand looks a bit goofy, almost like a cheap mobile game. Still, the old interface was nice but long overdue for an overhaul. And at least now things are clearer, right? Especially with the crew, equipment and upgrades all being placed in one area. That said, the cleaner structure comes at a cost. It's way less convenient because now you need extra clicks to see the details like crew skills or tank stat. I really hope they've reworked the platoon window, or better yet, removed it entirely, since it currently feels like an annoying pop-up blocking a third of the buttons in the garage. The expandable vehicle bar is alright. Custom vehicle playlist is a funny idea. I love how in the video he said you can now have a different playlist for every mood. That's funny, because every World of Tanks player only really has 2 moods. Anyways, at long last we've got an in-game armor model. This will probably cut Tomato GG or Tank GG's visitor count by 90%. The new post-battle result screen looks fine. My only hope is that they bring back the victory, defeat or draw music. If they don't, I will instantly uninstall again. Oh boys, tier 11. I don't know about this one. But what I know for sure is if they ever introduce a tier 11 artillery, I will uninstall right away. My main fear is that from the preview, these new tier 11 tanks don't look like realistic modern tanks. Instead, they look like some anime furry fantasy tanks. To me, that doesn't fit the game's supposed realistic World War II and Cold War identity. Then again, Wargaming already undermined that realism years ago with questionable vehicles and skins. There are so many amazing modern tanks they could have brought in. But what does Wargaming do? They go, nah, let's just invent a mystical fantasy tank. For example, the Germans had a real concept for the Maus 2. So why was there any need for a Rattenkönig? Also, why didn't they create the tier 11 chieftain to follow up the Super Conqueror? Nah, instead we get a tier 11 cannon opener. Nobody really likes these double barrel tanks anyway. And let's be honest, the cannon opener already feels like a tier 11, as it currently is. So yeah, I'm curious to see how they plan to balance this mess. And if they're going to make fantasy tanks, at least make them cool with a foundation in reality. For example, there's a fan-made concept of the M1A2 Jagdbrahams, a tank destroyer which could have been the tier 11 of the E3 tech tree. It's completely fictional, but it looks awesome and actually gives off realistic vibes, since it's basically a turretless TD version of the Abrams. Honestly, when I first saw it, I thought it was real. If you ask me, I'm against the idea of tier 11 altogether. Tier 10 should be the endgame. Wargaming should focus on making tier 10 more enjoyable instead of pushing things higher. Pushing tanks beyond tier 10 risks making them way too strong. Take the IS-7 for example. Its only real weakness is gun handling. If they fix that on a tier 11 version, you will have an absolute nightmare to play against. And that's just one case. That's why I think tier 11 might be a mistake. If they absolutely had to add tier 11, they should have just stick to realistic modern tanks. Like the tier 11 Leopard, which looks like an actual modern Leopard. What I really dislike even more is the introduction of abilities, passive or active.
Each tier 11 vehicle has its own unique mechanic. That may be an active ability that you can use at the right moment.
Well, not quite the correct moment. I love how in the preview they actually failed to use the double shot ability correctly by using it on a one-shot tank. This is what I've already turned me off about Onslaught. These abilities don't belong in World of Tanks. They make the game look like a hero shooter instead of a strategic armor-based warfare simulator and strip away the last bits of realism the game still had. I really think abilities ruined the gameplay. I've already disliked the passive damage ability of the Polish TDs, but the Tier 11 light tank, in particular where the blind firing reveals enemy position, is way too overpowered. It will only speed up games even further, and the maps simply don't provide enough sniper positions to handle that ability. But then again, maybe it won't matter much, because my own Tier 11 light tank will probably just suicide YOLO down Malinovka or Prokhorovka in the first 30 seconds anyway. But whatever. Because of this, I really hope they introduce larger maps alongside Tier 11. Another question I have is, will we need entire new crews to play Tier 11? They said that most competitive content like Onslaught and maneuvers will remain at Tier 10. So what's the plan for crews? Overall, I'm not sure if the game is even designed to handle Tier 11 properly. How will the economy cope? Will they increase the maximum view range? And how much view range will Tier 11 light tanks get? My hope is that Tier 11 feels more like 10.5. Slightly better, but not a full step above. What are your concerns regarding the Tier 11 tanks? Do you think the game can cope with a whole new tier? Or are you also a bit concerned regarding the balance? Let me know. At the beginning, I honestly thought this new system would finally let you create your own build for each tank. The idea of being able to strengthen different aspects and really shape a unique playstyle sounded exciting. It looked like something that could add a variety between vehicles, as long as this was balanced and better than the current field mods. But as I kept watching the video, I realized that you can actually apply all of the upgrades at once. And that, in my opinion, completely defeats the purpose. Instead of choosing a direction for your tank and making it unique, you just get everything at the same time. That's not about building your own playstyle, that's just making the vehicle flat out better. I've always appreciated the simplicity of the game back when you could only change your tank with equipment. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for upgrades if they actually give you meaningful choices. If you could pick between multiple setups that are viable, that would add real depth. But this version doesn't do that. It just makes tanks stronger across the board, which seems to look with no real trade-offs. And here's the thing. The field modification we currently have are already 90% of the time obvious in which option to pick. There's almost never a real decision to make, which means this new system could have been a chance to finally introduce variety and specialization instead. Wargaming wasted that potential and made the upgrades as numb and shallow as possible. But yeah, that is just Wargaming doing Wargaming things. The customization option that comes after upgrades are okay, but nothing worth grinding for. They don't feel like something that adds long-term excitement or something to flex in front of your mates. So yeah, what could have been a great system for unique builds ends up as a simple power creep. Great inferior, disappointing in execution. FCM 50T finally got some love as well. I've been following the game long enough to remember when that tank used to be considered a solid Tier 8 premium choice. Man, how times have changed. With all power creep over the years, it's now sitting at the bottom with the worst win rate among the Tier 8 heavy premiums. So yeah, above is long overdue. But seriously, not a single word about artillery rework? Come on, Wargaming. At least we finally got the rework of the stock grind. This is something players have been begging for over the last 15 years. No more painful stock grinds. If you've been following my channel for a bit, you know this is something I mentioned to the game designers when I talked to them about 1.5 years ago. Instead of a stock configuration being just the worst version of the top, make it an alternative configuration with a different playstyle. For example, gun A, which is stock, has great DPM and gun handling but poor alpha, and the gun B then has higher alpha but a little worse handling. The way should also work that the stock gun has enough penetration so you aren't forced to spam gold shells, while giving players a genuine choice between two different playstyles. And speaking of reworks, can we get an F for the 100,000s of experience we grinded for to get the radio modules unlocked? Because, of course, in true wargaming fashion, All the hundreds of thousands of experience you grinded on radios will be transferred to the tier 1 of the branch, forcing you to convert it into free experience if you want to make use of it. Classic Wargaming move. Then there's equipment. No mention of equipment rebalancing or overhauls, which in my opinion should have been happened a long time ago as well. Take hardening for example, it just inflates the HP pool, and when combined with nowadays 30-second repair kits cooldown, makes Turtle's TD gameplay even more branded. The problem is that, like so many of Wargaming's rebalancing, this all comes far too late. These changes should have been done years ago. The long delay has left World of Tanks unattractive for many newer players. And I'm not sure if this patch alone is enough to fix that. Hopefully, they also used this rebalancing wave to address premium tanks and most importantly the low tier abominations like the Left and its friends. What worries me is that Wargaming didn't mention anything about the lower tier rework in World of Tanks 2.0. And in my opinion that's the most important thing for attracting and keeping new players. The low tiers are harsh, unfun and a massive player barrier of entry into this complex, strategic but sometimes fun game. Without fixing that, the future and long-term health of the game is cooked. But we will cover this in a more detailed video in the near future. For now, the fact that lower tiers were ignored feels like a huge mistake. Wargaming says they have completely rewritten the core of the matchmaking system, which is great. Supposedly it now tries to make the team lineups as unique as possible, even when similar tanks are involved. Teams are now usually built with only one tier difference. Just hearing those words gave me goosebumps. Finally, the second best news after the Type 5 heavy buff. For years, +2 -2 matchmaking has been outdated and frustrated, because Wargaming kept buffing high tier tanks without considering the massive strength disparity between tiers. With this change, matchmaking should feel so much better. Big thumbs up from me. That said, I just hope they fix matchmaking not only for tanks but also for players. The current situation, where one team is stacked with unicorns while the other is full of tomatoes, is what gives us these infamous 3-minute 3 to 15 stomps. World of Tanks is at its best when games are close, tense and long lasting, not when matches collapse instantly because of skill imbalance. Now let's get into some specifics. No more Grille vs Minotauros, which is great. Also, we can finally say goodbye to rounds with 20 DBVs because they've kept the tank destroyers at 5 per team. That's a huge improvement. And on top of that, they've downsized the light tanks from 4 to 3 per team. Personally, I think 2 would have been the sweet spot, but still better than before. Speaking of sweet spots, I was really hoping that they would mention one more important change in this update. Cutting artillery down from 2 per game to 0. Sadly, removing RT wasn't even a chapter in World of Tanks 2.0. I honestly thought Wargaming was finally starting to understand us after so many reasonable changes. But I guess we can't have it all. Ayo, we are actually getting a World of Tanks campaign before GTA 6, which you have to complete to unlock the new third set of missions, if I understood that correctly. And to all the players who still haven't finished the first 2 sets of personal missions, you remind me of that one friend in the friend group which still doesn't have its driver license. Seriously, get your act together and finish them already. A big W is that you no longer have to play artillery for mission requirements. Instead, you can use light tanks. That's a brilliant change, because in theory, it should reduce 98% of the artillery players in the matchmaker. I can't count how many times I've harassed RT players after a battle, why they even play that shameful class. And the answer is always the same. I have to play it for the missions, while their account looked like this. But well, now they don't have to anymore, and that's a huge step forward. As for the new reward, the Black Rock tank basically looks like the Griffin if it had been pumped full of steroids. Hold up, am I tweaking? Are we actually getting new maps? Just kidding, it's only one new map. Yes, you heard right. For World of Tanks 2.0 we get one new map. And honestly that's kind of disappointing, as they label it for the biggest update in the game's history. I was expecting at least 2 new maps, if not more. Instead, we just get 1. Though, to be fair, it does look decent. The lanes look more engaging and give opportunities for flanking maneuvers, which is definitely a thumbs up. The game desperately needs more of that. Still, getting only one new map in World of Tanks 2.0 probably means we shouldn't expect much more in the future. Better than nothing sure, but still a letdown. To be completely honest, I was also expecting them to rework existing maps or bring back archived ones to make them more suitable for tier 11 gameplay. Many of the current 1000 by 1000 meter maps are already maxed out with the tier 10 abilities, let alone what tier 11 tanks are going to bring. With things like the light tank's spotting ability, maps will absolutely need to be bigger. Looking at this update, I think the future of World of Tanks depends on larger maps being introduced. And here's something we would all love to see: community created maps. Imagine if Wargaming allowed players to build their own maps, then added the best ones into the game. They would have both saved Wargaming a ton of work and money and bring in fresh ideas. Of course, they are probably afraid someone will create a 4-lane map that would completely overwhelm the player base, myself included. But still, the idea has huge potential. Now great news for all the players who hate to engage with the game's armor models. Armor flashlight. But honestly, this mechanic just dumps down the game even further. Personally, I think they should have gone the opposite direction and removed the penetration indicator reticle altogether. I've caught myself plenty of times in matches being surprised that I could pen some insane angle or random weak spot on an enemy tank that I normally would never have aimed or shot at. That's because the reticle told me yes, you can pen it. Now with the armor flashlight, this pushes it even further because it spreads beyond your reticle. It removes the need for players to actually learn armor layouts and weak spots. Instead of studying tanks and gaining knowledge through experience and getting more involved into the game, which is a great way of how to get players hooked for ages, the game just shows you everything in real time. That makes it less engaging, less rewarding and honestly less fun in the long run. What's interesting is that they finally added armor models inside the garage, which I think is a fantastic idea. But then, right after that, they introduced the armor flashlight. So on one hand, they encourage you to study armor layouts, but on the other hand, they give out a cheat sheet during battles. And it's not even an optional skill, it's just there for anyone who can find the Y key during a fight. It feels like yet another mechanic that lowers the skill ceiling of the game instead of holding or raising it. New sounds are always a nice change of pace. And at first I was excited. But after listening more closely with my brand new €400 limited edition Dr. Sponge headphones, I came to a conclusion. Making the sounds more realistic isn't always a good thing. Anyone who has ever fired a real gun knows that most guns and barrel sounds in real life are just loud, flat bangs. They don't carry much depth or character. And when you're making the game sound too realistic, you risk losing the juiciness that makes them so satisfying. Personally, I would have loved if they had brought back the old E100 gun sound. That was peak audio design. Even now, almost a decade later, I can still hear the thunder of those shells. That sound was just so iconic, and it's something today's realistic approach just doesn't capture anymore. So yeah, new sounds are fine. Definitely great for the lower tiers in which the sounds are too stale and boring. But realistic doesn't always mean better. A question to you guys. Once World of Tanks 2.0 drops and the whole game looks and sounds different, would you still be interested in seeing old school pre-2.0 World of Tanks footage? Because I've still got tons of gameplay sitting on my hard drive. Let me know. The new Fjords bunk event is a nice change. Normally 9 out of 10 times game on Fjords end up in a hulldown standoff, where you're stuck trying to snipe at a non-existing weak spot of a can opener for 30 minutes straight. Then of course the enemy medium tanks swing around and flank because your own medium tanks are ass. Not the most fun experience. This event actually helps break that stalemate, so that's a small W from Wargaming. On Angst, the new event is, yeah, what can I say?
I like trains.
Red Shower has not one but 2 crashed Zeppelins. I think that's actually why they are calling it World of Tanks 2.0. Because of the 2 Zeppelins. And then there's Paris. Honestly, the new event there is the worst out of the bunch. It doesn't open the map up at all, instead it's just make it even more perfect for hulldown heavies to push closer together. It feels like it exaggerates Paris problems rather than fixing it. So yeah, some of these random events are neat, others feel pointless, but overall it's at least something fresh. But how about actually designing good maps instead of creating these random events which nobody asked for? So, what's your opinion on World of Tanks 2.0? Do you like the changes? Do you think it's enough for the game to truly deserve the 2.0 label? From 1 out of 10, how would you rate this update? Let me know in the comments. As for me, I overall would give the update a 5 out of 10. It's not that bad, but it comes about 4 years too late. If this had been released during the COVID era, it would have been hit completely different. Back then, though, Wargaming was probably too busy figuring out how to milk their whales more frequently per year than just once on Christmas. That brings me to another big issue, monetization. Wargaming didn't mention anything about changing their strategy. And to me, that means nothing will change. We're still going to have broken premium tanks, just now creeping into tier 10 and beyond. I wouldn't be surprised if we see tier 10 premium tanks already popping up in this year's holidays ops. They've already ruined tier 8 with the flood of premiums, and I think tier 9 is their next target. It's frustrating because they could have monetized the game much more effectively by selling cosmetics, not in the over-the-top way like Call of Duty does, but in a style that actually fits World of Tanks' somewhat realistic tank theme. Another huge mistake is the lack of attention to lower tiers rework. This update is supposed to attract new or returning players, but the lower tiers remain untouched, and that's the most important part for onboarding new players. Sure, making the stock grind better is amazing, but there's more to it than that. For years, World of Tanks has had a problem with newer players bouncing off because lower tiers are so unfun. It's always been a niche game, but this update doesn't fix that core problem. And let's be real, only one new map for World of Tanks 2.0, that's just depressing. They could have at least given us 2. Hopefully they bring back some of the old arcade maps, and honestly, community maps would be the best solution of all. Let players create them and save Wargaming the work. The one thing which would make the name 2.0 all glory would be to bring back all chat in combination with proximity chat. Let's just hope World of Tanks 2.0 really slaps, because if it doesn't, I can't see me forcing myself to play this game much longer. I'm not saying that I will retire from World of Tanks to World of Warships, but if Wargaming somehow managed to ruin this update, would you guys be interested in me covering actual modern tank gameplay in Battlefield 6 instead? Let me know. For now, let's just hope they don't mess it up big time.